Last weekend, I got the opportunity to visit Six Flags Great America in Gurnee, Illinois. On my trip, I got to ride 14 of the 15 outstanding roller coasters they have to offer, the one exception being American Eagle because it was closed on my visit. So allow me to take the next few minutes to rank every single one of these coasters from worst to best. Number 14 is Sprocket Rockets. This is the park's Vekoma Jr. coaster, and this is the 207-meter model. This is the same exact ride as Roadrunner Express at Six Flags Magic Mountain, Roller Skater at Kentucky Kingdom, and some others. There's not anything overly special about this ride that makes it stand out above other coasters at Six Flags Great America, but it's still a pretty good starter ride for junior thrill seekers. Number 13 is Little Dipper. The ride experience of this ride is pretty uneventful. It's just a simple double out and back layout with slow turns and dips, but the history makes it a must-ride at the park. The ride originally opened in 1950 at a small park called Kittyland in Melrose Park, Illinois, but when that park closed down in 2009, Six Flags saw a perfect opportunity to add a new experience to the park, thus allowing Little Dipper's legacy to live on. This is a pretty standard ride, but it's a great addition to the park, and I think it adds a lot to the lineup. Number 12 is Demon. This aerodynamics multi-looper features a standard layout for other multi-loopers of its time. The vertical loops pull decent positives and the track ride's decently smooth. The track work is a bit of a mess and I did have to brace myself with the corkscrews, but I hope the park salvages this attraction for many years to come. Number 11 is the Dark Knight Coaster. This is the classic Mock Rides Wild Mouse model, but I personally enjoyed this one more than the average Wild Mouse due to the enclosed setting and decent Batman theming. Although due to its clone nature, it's still not really anything to write home about. Number 10 is the Flash Vertical Velocity. This intimate impulse coaster has the standard layout with one twisted and one untwisted spike. The chaos of this ride getting progressively faster makes for an out-of-control and thrilling ride experience. The positives of getting pulled up the backward spike in the back row make this ride worth it for me. But as with the Wild Mouse, there was nothing about the ride to differentiate it from other impulses like Possessed at Dorney Park and Steel Venom at Valley Fair. Still, this is a good supporting coaster and it adds a lot to the lineup. Number 9 is the Joker Free Fly Coaster. This was my second S&S free spin and my first full-length model. I counted 7 flips on this ride, which made it much more chaotic than Tumbili at King's Dominion. Now, just like the last 2 entries, the cloned and simple nature of this ride prevents me from putting it any higher. But I still thoroughly enjoyed this attraction, and I think that Six Flags made a great choice in putting this in just about every park. The number 8 spot is Going to Whizzer. Opening as Willard's Whizzer in 1976, this Schwarzkopf speed racer provides a unique ride experience with its spiral lift hill and bathtub-like cars. The layout just meanders around a swamp, but it does pull decent forces when it swoops low to the ground. Despite its old age, Whizzer's track is extremely smooth, and despite its max speed of only 47 miles per hour, it's still intense enough to thrill guests of all ages. Due to positive guest reception, I think that this ride will continue to entertain park guests for many years to come. Number 7 is going to have to go to X-Flight. Now, watching from off-ride makes this seem like one of, if not the best B&M wing coasters in North America. Even on-ride, this is a smooth ride with several good inversions and near misses. But the vest restraints absolutely ruin the ride. These hug your body tighter than any other vest restraints I've personally experienced. They remove any comfort or forces that may have been present on the ride if it had traditional over-the-shoulder restraints. Now, because of this, I can't even forgive it for its good layout. Number 6 is Superman Ultimate Flight. B&M Flyers have never been my personal cup of tea, considering that I didn't much care for Manta at SeaWorld Orlando. But I actually thoroughly enjoyed Superman for its bone-crushing pretzel loop and other fun elements. It spends most of its time meandering around its plot of land, but I personally think that that's just fine. It allows you to actually pretend like you're flying. This is one of the most popular rides at the park, constantly hovering at around a 90-minute wait all day. It's a fun ride, but it's not necessarily a standout at Six Flags Great America. Number 5 is Batman the Ride. Despite being a cloned model, Batman the Ride is one that I look forward to on any visit to a Six Flags park. Every element on this coaster delivers punchy positive G's and feet-ripping intensity. The simple layout leaves you out of breath by the time you hit the brake run every single time, and this is why this is probably my personal favorite cloned model of all time. Number 4 is Goliath. This may come as an upset to some, but I didn't care much for this RMC creation that I decided to make my 200th credit. The ride only has 6 elements, and 2 of these elements, the 2 turnarounds, do nothing no matter what row you decide to sit in. The first drop is the highlight of the ride for many, and this element is definitely better in the back, but the ride as a whole is much better in the front. The ejector hill provides stronger airtime in the front, and the whip into the dive loop is much more prevalent in the front of the train. My personal favorite element is the zero-G stall, and this feels the same all throughout the train. The ride jackhammers a little bit if you sit in the second row of each car, so try to ride in row 11 instead of row 12 for a back row ride. The ride is solid, but the layout doesn't deliver enough to warrant a higher ranking in my opinion. It ranks at number 30 in my top 50 and number 4 in the park. Number 3 is an underrated pick, Viper. I was not expecting this 1995 PTC Woody to make it into the top 3 of the park, but here we are. The first half of the ride doesn't deliver much in terms of forces, but the second half is a constant riot of strong ejector airtime and powerful laterals, all the while delivering a smooth and enjoyable ride experience. In this way, it kind of reminds me of Phoenix at Knoebels, which is regarded very highly by the Golden Ticket Awards, calling it the world's best wooden coaster. Now, I've never ridden the Cyclone at Coney Island, but this is a mirrored clone of it, so I'd assume that this ride pulls very similar forces. Now, I overall enjoyed this ride more than Goliath and would rather have it at my home park. Viper is my number 28 in my top 50 and my number 3 at Six Flags Great America. Number 2 is Max Force. This is an absolute rush. No launch in America can be compared to 0 to 78 miles per hour in 1.8 seconds. This launch is a sustained gut punch that leaves your gut and your breath behind as you zip through the short 5 inversion layout. The first of these inversions is called the dog tongue. This is most comparable to a banana roll, except it rotates you 90 degrees instead of 180. This is a fun element with decent hang time, but nothing to write home about. The Heartline roll that follows, however, is a chaotic lateral moment. This was to be expected, as it is the fastest inversion in the world, taken at 60 miles per hour. Now the final element, the max dive loop, is most comparable to the first inversions on Untamed, the double inverting stall, as it flips you up, holds you sideways, before ripping you back to the ground. There is not a dead moment on this ride, and it is guaranteed to leave you breathless on the final brake run. Max Force is my number 24 in my top 50, and my number 2 at Six Flags Great America. My personal favorite roller coaster at Six Flags Great America is Raging Bull. In the words of Theme Park Crazy, you can never go wrong with a B&M Hyper, and this is a very good example of that. At Kings Island, my home park, we have Diamondback. Diamondback generally follows the standard out and back layout of a regular Hyper. That is not Raging Bull. Raging Bull stands as the first and only Hyper Twister manufactured by B&M, and it's a novelty. The non-airtime focused layout serves as a breath of fresh air from riding B&M Hypers that feel virtually identical at every new park I go to. The first drop is by far the standout element of the ride. The pre-drop shoves you forward a little bit, gaining enough speed for the train to absolutely rip down the 208-foot drop. Raging Bull's first drop is among my favorites due to its aggressiveness and sustained forces. Now following the drop, there isn't another big standout moment. It's just a constant mix of intense yet graceful turns and strong floater camelbacks, creating a complete and well-rounded ride experience. This is my number 2 B&M Hyper, my number 16 overall roller coaster, and my number 1 ride at Six Flags Great America. As I'm sure you've noticed, there was not one ride that had a mostly negative review. This is largely in part to the park's well-rounded coaster lineup. I had a very good time visiting Six Flags Great America, and I'm glad that this is the park home to my 200th coaster milestone. And if you haven't visited this park yet, I would highly recommend getting there as quickly as possible.